Okay, welcome to the Drupal usability meeting on June 6th, 2025. Present today are Simo Helston, Thomas Howell, and myself, Ralph Koller. And we are looking quickly again at issue number 3511972, allow composer and rsync location to be configured via the UI. It's basically a pattern that is not present today in the Drupal admin UI to enable an admin to basically change the path and the file name to a file that is, or a binary that is used, for example, in the example of Composer and rsync, and in this case for Package Manager. And what we've talked about is basically it's adding the following settings page. That's Package Manager settings. When you get to that page, you see the status message. The path to Composer was automatically detected. The path to rsync was automatically detected. And underneath, you have a field set with executable paths for Composer, as well as rsync in the placeholder, as you can see here. And on the other hand, you also have to note you have on the reports, status reports page, as you can see here, under the Composer version is checked, and you see the version number as well as the path that is the place for the Composer file. For rsync, that check on the status reports page doesn't exist yet. And the consensus last week, Benji, Simo, and I were there, was basically for one to remove the status message, because basically if you go to that page, the assumption would be first, okay, now it's detected for the first time, but the question is, if I don't go to the page, is basically that path not set yet? And also if you go, for example, to media types and then return at a later point to Package Manager, then again, path is auto-detected. It feels wrong, and yeah, it becomes redundant and annoying at a certain point, and the suggestion was simply remove the status message and replace it with basically a text block, or how, I'm not sure how we called it, but simply a block where you see the path to the two binaries, and that way it indirectly communicates, hey, Composer is correctly installed and available at the following path, and same for rsync. And the other point was simply removing the placeholder text, and that way a user is able then to alter the path seen above. And the second point was, at the moment, if you, for example, Composer, if you try to change the path and that path and or the file does not exist, then an error is thrown and you're unable to save the configuration. And yeah, the question I was uncertain about when writing that up was the reasoning behind that, because is it really wanted, and should it be possible, or is it potential problem if you place a wrong file name there? But the reasoning behind was basically, Simo brought me up to speed again, is the use case of, for example, you on your local environment don't have rsync available at this certain place, and you know for sure that on your production server, for example, Composer is called Composer, and that way you're unable basically to set it to the necessary production settings that way. Yeah, and one other small detail we've just figured out right now, if you go back to there, because you have also the option of config split as well as to override. And if you do that here, frsync, if you override it in your settings PHP, you get that status message. There's also a feature we've discussed a few months ago in the usability meeting. But now we found just during our discussion, if you, for example, now change that, you get an additional new error, not the error kind of error you had before with the inline one, but an undefined array key on top of that. So that's basically the gist. And while writing up, I also asked around, and the people I've asked were uncertain if it's a good idea to make that form validation pass, even though the pass doesn't exist, or if it's not. So yeah, that was the question behind before. And yeah, any further questions or additions?
I checked one of the sites I've been working on. I can't share my screen because it's a client site.
Oh, okay.
But there I checked the file systems path ad, admin/config/media/file-system. And then because it's a multilingual site, there is a full path for interface translations directory. And that's set on the config form. And there it allows to input non-existing directories. But that's actually, with the directories, it's a little bit different from async or composer, because directories can be attempted to create. So the site can attempt to create directories, empty directories, but the site can never attempt to create executables. So
Yeah.
that's a different use case, actually. So I think not sure if it's undecided if it's good or bad to allow different path, then we could just leave it be until somebody has actual use case. And now that we know that with certain errors, settings PHP override works, and that's the most common use case for different paths in different environments.
This reminds me of back in the old days when I worked with companies that had multiple environments, and the different environments would have different paths. So similar and yet different, but like if in each environment, let's just say you had dev, stage, prod in the path that you needed to point at, that difference in pathing was always problematic when you didn't have the config file itself configuring each of those paths, because it seems like the design pattern or the working assumption in Drupal is that the configuration in the database is for the environment in which you're building the site. It works well for the blog use case where a person only has a single environment. And we're touching now on what do you do in more complex development workflows where you can have one or more copies of a database that may have different or the same paths, and the paths on the file systems may be different. And so I'm just wondering if we are stumbling into a larger question, and if there are any other existing standards or discussions around how to handle multiple environments in the case of Drupal. Like what do we expect? I agree that the status message at the top is the first one, the path is automatically detected. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I do see some value in every time you visit this page showing that what is configured is overriding defaults.
Yeah, just one brief addition, that status message underneath here, that these values are overridden, that is shown on every reload of the page. And that is okay. That is
Yes.
a different behavior. That had nothing to do with that merge request, that status
Yep.
message here.
And I understand, and I agree with that. I was just saying, like, I agree that the top thing makes no sense to me, especially with the status page itself. The other one, when you override things, I don't think you can be overly cautious in communicating to administrators that they're looking at something that's overridden. Maybe it doesn't have to be a status message. Maybe it needs to be like actually part of how you look at things. Um, if we make the change that you had discussed, Ralph, for the executable paths, where we remove the automatically detected path, I would probably change executable paths to something like custom executable paths or something like that, just to indicate that the reason it's blank isn't that it doesn't exist, it's that or we're able to override it. So it could be overridable or override executable path override or something like that. But if it's blank, my only concern is for someone who's new, who does not understand file systems, they might think that it isn't working when in fact it is. Um, but I agree, like removing those paths if they're auto detected seems very reasonable. I would just make certain that the messaging in this block is very, very clear that if you enter data here, this is to override it, to point it to alternative locations.
1 second.
And I don't know that this matters, so I have to defer to people who have experience, but is there a use case in which you might auto detect Composer 1 and they want to use a newer version or an older version of Composer for some reason, or a newer version or an older version of rsync? Like, is it conceivable that we have more than one version of these tools on the file system that we care about?
Um, 1 second. I'm not sure. One brief remark. Unfortunately, that is not visible in this example here anymore. But in regards of the override, the executable path problem is, technically speaking, now paths are already set. But if you have a fresh install and get to that page, that is empty. So you don't have, for example, set user local bin composer or user bin rsync, but it's has no entry there. So just in regards of the attribution, I'm not sure, or how you want to label it then, or if it would be still okay to simply say override,
Well,
or maybe simply say custom executable path.
yeah, I like custom. I override like, and if it doesn't get made, I'm just recommending that. Um, though I question whether or not we shouldn't be detecting and setting those values during installation, or indicating that you have no composer, you have no rsync that was detected. Like, to me, this is a key or core behavior. And during installation, we should be surfacing whether or not these tools are found and configuring them and giving the option of configuring them alternatively. That's an opinion, and I very open to being told I'm wrong, but I just feel like this is a fundamental shift in how we think. Like in the old days, you didn't have that automatic install capability from with Drupal. This allows that. So it's important to communicate during installation if that's possible, or for some reason it's being disabled.
Just 1 second. Just to illustrate, about the point you've made. I've logged into the web container and I'll rename composer to composer. Now, let's say it's a fresh installation, and on that system, composer is called composer. Now, if the person gets to the status reports page, they'll see, oh, composer version, there's an error. Composer was not found. The error message was failed to run process. The command user local bin composer format blah 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 blah. The composer can be configured in settings PHP in the settings form. Then you get there. Problem is, yeah, the status message is wrongful and not working properly. But technically speaking, if you would now say composer error, it works. So I mean, then that status message or that auto detection is faulty and not trustworthy on that page. On the status report page, instead, it's trustworthy, because if you go back there, you see composer version again, local bin composer error, and everything is fine. So people would run into it, and our recommendation was simply remove that status message and, strictly speaking, have two lines, one for composer, the composer version. It's basically mirroring those two entries on the status reports page to the config page as well. That you basically simply have hey, the composer version is there in version 2.8.9 at the path, at the given path, and same for rsync. And that way it's directly communicated, everything is set up and working fine.
That makes sense. I have a crazy question. Is there any security risk from being able to set this? Because it's making something, it's pointing to something executable. So let's say I put an executable file in the files directory. So someone got into the site maliciously. Is there any risk here in letting them point to something that we want to then allow like execution against the site? Like, let's say they put in a version of Composer that pointed towards a malicious repository.
No idea. I'm not a developer, therefore.
Yeah, and I'm I'm barely a developer. I'm more Swiss Army knife. But I'm why that matters to us is how we think about what should be here, and what messages we are sending seems important if that's a risk.
Yeah, there's another. It's not in core, but it's well known contrib module image magic, and it also allows to set path to executable, but it doesn't allow to. It only sets the path and not the executable file. So is that async the command, or is that the path where async command lies?
Yeah, I don't know, and I may be asking a question that isn't pertinent or useful or helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with the consensus that we need to get rid of that first status message. It's silly. And then just indicating if it will work with those fields empty because it has correctly auto-detected something, then just changing it so that it's clear that these are custom executable paths. So I think those are smaller requests. But beyond that, I mean, I always get nervous when I see we're allowing a website to install things, because that just makes me personally skittish. And I worry that non-technical people aren't necessarily savvy enough to even ask that question. So if it's here, I just wonder about that. But I'm betting that, yeah, this is the wrong forum for the discussion, I think.
But I think here, if somebody would maybe add some other command, like, well, you can't really do something like that would kind of mess things up if you put something like rm, but you could add some other executable there, or kind of put the different way around. Hey, what would happen actually if they are the different ways around? Does it check if the file is composed, or does it check if the file exists?
Wait a second. Node. I've just checked if Node, because I just went into a user local bin.
Yeah.
And yeah, for example, Node, and it hasn't no complaint.
Okay, so that's actually an issue. It doesn't check if it's the path to composer. It just checks if it's if there is. Oh, can you change the execution bit from the path, like from some of the sudo chmod -x at the command line, so to make the file in the file system not executable.
Could you maybe
Yeah.
add it to the chat quickly? That's easier.
Maybe you need sudo or not.
I don't think sudo is necessary on ddev.
But
okay.
Just be sure to put it back when you're done.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, forgot the actual command would be like this.
CM, okay.
Yeah.
Already wondered. CM.
Okay.
Okay, I need sudo. Okay.
Yeah.
That worked. Again,
So now it's not executable.
Now, as you can see, chuck.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's not acceptable.
Yeah, so it does check that, but it doesn't check what the file is.
Could we test one other thing real fast? Can you go to the files path?
One second, just have to copy first the steps I've did, so I'm able to add it to the comment later on. And chmod node. Otherwise, I forget everything. Okay, now go ahead. Thomas?
This may be a meaningless test, but could you get your path to the Drupal, like the files directory, the files path? Because I'm curious if we can actually point to something in there as well.
It's more HTML. I guess 1 second, I even have this. Do I have it here? No. Make the private and touch.
That's not the actual, like, I mean the where we can store files for utilization by Drupal. It's like the files, it's under sites/files/.
Yeah, that's usually the public version, but there is also the option to upload files into private, and that's.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the public is what I was wanting to test.
PD site.
Default.
You mean that somebody could upload a malicious file?
Yes, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Because you could put in a malicious executable file here called composer.
Or
But
let's
it
yes.
does check that it's not executable.
Right, but if you made
You
it,
can, yeah.
But let's try PHP.
But
There's a file, as you can see here, PHP that is executable.
but it's a
it's a
directory.
directory.
Is it a? Oh crap!
Yeah, but you could check what's inside the directory.
Maybe, um, okay, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
I simply copy something into the oops. I copy something into the file.
And just make it executable. It can be, you could take an image or whatever, make it executable.
Copy user local bin hoster.
A dot.
Yeah, or a dot, yeah. Was it copied? Yeah, it's copied. And now files. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So because this is configurable in the database, it means that in theory, someone could save an executable file to this area. I just don't know if they can give a file that has been uploaded executable rights. That's the one thing that I don't know if that's possible. But the fact that it's not even trying to detect this, like the path should be specific to places that are considered safe for something that's executable, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the difference with how ImageMagick does it is that ImageMagick only accepts the directory, and then it automatically assumes the executable is called convert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then you can always rename stuff, but it would have the executable name always.
Again, a security expert may tell me that I'm wrong or that this isn't a vulnerability, but I'm looking at this through the lens of how would someone even know? Like, let's say I went to Stack Exchange, or worse, I go to ChatGPT and it gives me some corrupted instructions.
Yeah.
I guess it's going to be a problem for everything. So I may be, again, overthinking it, but I would just make very clear why that field is empty when it's empty and what that means versus what we put in there.
I think Benji could tell about that security part, but he's not here today.
Yeah. But strictly speaking, looking at the field labels with composer executable path, could it be read that it's only the directory like in ImageMagick, or does path also include the file name? Strictly speaking, from a technical perspective.
I think it does include the executable.
Okay.
It's path to the executable. So and the executable is that the actual program.
Okay. The binary.
Binary, yeah. So the directory is also executable, but it doesn't do anything.
Okay. I just had the thought, if executable path would be only referring to the directory, then it would be even more correct to simply align it to the behavior of ImageMagick. And it wouldn't need any adjustment in regards of the microcopy. But Yet, what do you two think in regards of would it be a reasonable step to only provide the path, the directory path to where the binary resides instead? Or is it okay and good to also add the file name?
Do they have different file names? Composer 1,
okay.
Composer 2, Composer 3.
Okay, then it's necessary. Okay, understood.
Or is it different folder for those?
Okay. Okay, the point is just to summarize the point we are at. What's needed is definitely in case of the override in settings PHP and using the name on the override, we get that that undefined error key. That should be fixed. Then check for the file name to prevent the node example. And also check the path. What in regards of the example of var any file within the root of the project. But in regards of the initial question with should it be possible to save a configuration if there is an error?
Not allowing to save is consistent with the behavior of ImageMagick. Folders can be, or directories can maybe be saved because they can be created, but executables cannot. So I think this is in line with a well-known contrib module.
Okay. So basically, should we drop the suggestion from last week with enabling the saving?
I think we can do it because we have a kind of an example of another executable that's doing the same.
Yeah, okay.
And because what was tested before was directories, and directories can be created. So it's I think it's okay.
Okay.
Though I would ask from a security perspective if we should block the ability to use the site's path.
Yeah.
So whatever would be writable by Drupal itself, any public space, probably don't want to allow that. But I, again, could be wrong. I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah, that was the point with check the path within the project root, any binary.
Yeah. And I think if it would be, oh no, that's not if you delete or replace that one, then it wouldn't get the executable bit. But yeah, but it's to check to wonder if we should the public folder. Yeah, I think it would be worthwhile to not allow it. It's also easy to validate.
Yeah. And the other way around, would it be okay-ish if a file would reside in the private file folder if one is defined, and if there is a file there, a binary there? Would that be a reasonable approach from an DevOps perspective, that someone places important binaries there?
No, it
Okay.
shouldn't.
Okay.
So I think it should be raised for consideration. I think we shouldn't in this group make a recommendation about that, but it should be. We should point out that they should get an opinion about that.
Yeah, yeah. Then it was not intended as any recommendation. It was just asking in that regard.
Yeah.
So should we ask
anything a folder that can be used to upload stuff? Yeah.
To upload stuff. So basically any folder, public or private, where files could be uploaded.
Yeah. And also, actually, there is some, I don't know if it still exists, but back in the day when there were kind of multi-boot systems where you could run Linux and Windows side by side, and they could have a shared folders that would be mounted to both of them, and there might be some file systems that could be mounted at and don't handle those bits perfectly. So, but it would be really an edge case. But so it might be something that would be different for different file systems. How would Windows do it?
A reasonable question. Okay. Okay. And shall I add that disclaimer or question to the comment as well?
Yeah, if there are different operating systems that can run Drupal, are they able to manage the file permissions? So that things in like put this so that this couldn't be used to execute something that's not supposed to be.
So this means is one site that is run on two different operating systems?
I think if the well, it doesn't if the files upload folder is mounted from a system that doesn't limit the executables access.
Okay. So basically you have your site installed, let's say, for the sake of the example, on Linux, and your file, let's say your private file system folder is mounted on Windows, for example, and in that folder you then have an executable.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's I can't. So it would take some time to figure out what could be a configuration where that happens. Probably it doesn't happen, but I can't be sure. Like Microsoft DOS wouldn't differentiate with those, but that's not something we run websites on.
Yeah. But basically that edge case would fall under the example of public and private file folder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, understood. Understood. Okay, then it's clear then. Thank you. And okay, those are the three main points we've had. Basically the override in settings PHP and the error then the example of a binary, different binary, like for example node in our example, and then the public and private file folder question from our end. And the other thing, do we have a consensus here to change executable paths to custom? I mean, custom executable paths. So.
If they are auto-detected, I think it displays them here. So I think it's just. And what's the?
No, the question was basically also in regard of the point Thomas made, a question to change. Where is it? Yeah, there. To change it to custom executable paths.
As the one who suggested it, I like it. So you have my consensus to vote.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of helps to see that if you don't need to do anything if you do something, if you don't have a non-standard system.
Yep. And yeah, if the two paths in the text block above are present and everything is okay, then there's also no necessity for a person not knowing what this all means to take action. So
yeah,
the only thing I wonder, but that is probably out of the scope, would it make sense not only to display the path to, for example, Composer, but instead also because over here you see checked, and if everything is okay, nothing happens and all good. But would it be helpful on that settings page, because to have something like a check mark, a green check mark saying, hey, everything is fully functional, or have also a text meaning everything in place, functional, something like that? Just some sort of feedback to the user that everything is up and running.
I think no. There are so many things that are running. So only if something is wrong, then I think maybe then notify.
Yes, on the status reports, yes, no, but I'm referring to the package manager settings.
Yeah.
On here, it is a different perspective. On here, on the status reports, it's totally correct to have only exceptions noted. But on the other way around, over here, it's, I think, would be helpful to have a feedback that everything is okay with the current settings, and those custom executable paths, you only need to take action if basically you know what you want.
I like the idea conceptually, but you kind of were able to demonstrate that that status message could be wrong about them even being automatically detected. So I'm wondering how, like, it seems like it is out of scope for this particular issue, but if you wanted to open up a suggestion that they do something along those lines, if they can do it right, it would be helpful, in my opinion. But it's not part of this issue.
Yeah. Also not necessarily considered it as part of the issue. It's probably out of scope, but still to make it more clear, it might be helpful. That was my thought. Okay. So, but returning to that label here, CMO, are you also in line with that, or would you have other suggestions, or should it be kept as executable paths as is?
Well, one of them is shorter, but the other one, I don't mind it being custom, because then it's kind of you don't need to do anything about it if things work.
Yeah. Oh,
Unfortunately,
okay.
I have to go. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Nick.
we are also at the top of the hour, so okie doke. Yeah, then I'll finish the write-up and we'll see. If in case I have follow-up questions, I ping both of you over on Slack, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okie doke. Then, yeah, thank you and
Thank you.
have a relaxed evening.
Yeah.
Or weekend.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.